Hello, and welcome to my home. In case you're wondering, yes, I do have a very large chalkboard in my home, and the reason for that is one of the local schools donated it to me so that I can tutor the students. And right now, we're at a time in our history where many people are staying home more often and they have to teach their children at home, and they're really not sure what to do or how to make the lessons understandable for the children. So, what I want to do is just give you a few tips and things that I've done that made the lessons easier for the children to learn. First of all, when you are teaching your child, make the learning fun and easy to understand. So, if you're going to teach them about measurement or about fractions, make some cookies and show them how to measure the milk in a measuring cup and read the numbers so that you can see 1.5 cups of milk or 1.5 cups of sugar, whatever the recipe calls for. So when you incorporate fun in the learning process, it becomes so much easier for the students to learn. You want to practice the lesson and activity before presenting it to the children to make sure that you're doing it in a way that's to their grade level. Okay, and you want to do activities that reinforce the lesson. So, for instance, if you're playing the game concentration, that's where you have some cards and you turn them over and you have to find all the matches. Okay, so if you want the child to learn how to match the letter A, capital A to lowercase a, then you can have them write out the whole alphabet, one letter on each card, all capital, and then have them write out all the letters and one letter on each card, but the lowercase. And then you turn all the cards over, mix them up, and turn the cards over. And then that way, when they turn the card over, they have to say the name of the letter, and then they have to turn the other card over and say the name of that letter. And if it doesn't match, they turn it back over. But if you have a capital A and a lowercase a, they say A for both of them, and they get a match, and they get whoever has the most matches at the end will be the winner. And then you can also have team competitions. If you have lots of children around that are around the same age, or one a little bit younger or a little bit older, when you teach the lesson, you teach it at a level that all age levels can understand it. And so if you make it very simple, then even the younger grades can compete against the older students, and they really have a good time beating their older siblings. So if you teach it in a way that they can understand it, then the competitions will be so fun for everybody. So what I usually like to do is I do like a math competition or a math contest. So after I've taught them a trick or two on how to do the math, you'll have two different teams. You'll have team A, and you can put whatever name you want. And then you have team B, and you have one person come up from each team to the board, and then you give them a math problem, and then the first person to write the correct answer down will get a point for their team. And then you would put their team, this is A, and this is B, and then you would give them their points. Okay? And so kids really like that. That's one way of doing competitions. You can do that with math, you can do that with spelling. Okay? A lot of times I'll teach them some kind of math trick and see if they remember it. And if they remember it, I give it to them in the contest. Okay? So for instance, if they're learning their times tables and they're doing the 11 times tables and they're working with double digits, I teach them that if the number that you're multiplying by 11, this is only for the 11 times tables, okay? If these two digits here add up less than 10, then you can do this trick that I'm about to show you, okay? You would put the 2 here, put the 3 here, and then you add 2 plus 3 is 5, and you put the 5 here. And the answer would be 253, and that saves them so much time from having to do it the long way. So when you have a competition, you ask them, how much is 11 times 23? And they have to write down 253 real quick. Or if you want to have them do it without the board, okay, if you don't have a board at home, you can still have them like maybe hit a cup or something, so like a buzzer, and then they give you the answer. Okay, so that's one trick that I would show them how to do. So they catch on to this very quickly. So then if I say to them, how much is 300, How much is 11 times 35? 385. They get it so fast. They're really excited about that. So that's one trick that you can use. And what I usually do to make sure that they know what they're doing, I will give them a number that's a little bit more than 10 to make sure that they understand the rules. Okay? How much is 11 times 57? For this trick, you would not put the 5 there and the 7 there because you're going to have some carryover. So anything that's more than 10, this is equal to 12. So you wouldn't use that particular trick. There are other tricks for that. Okay? So that's one way. Competition. And then you can also have them watch game shows. I know it's very good to watch Wheel of Fortune because it teaches the children the letters. It teaches them how to read the words. And Wheel of Fortune is a good game to watch. You can also play games for competitions. You can make your own Wheel of Fortune game using spelling words that they have. Or you can play Jeopardy using the different subjects that they are studying. So you can have a category for reading and spelling and math, and you can have all those different categories, and you put the dollar amounts, and then you would have the questions based off of what they're learning. Um, so, for instance, if they had to do a Jeopardy question about math, okay, and then you had the question, this number is on the top of a fraction, they would answer, what is the numerator? Okay, so that's a way that you could use Jeopardy. All right, so if you're not familiar with the game, watch that on television with your children so that they can see how to play the game, and then you make up your own questions. You can use color construction paper to show the different categories with different colors, and then you can put the dollar amounts on the back of the cards. Okay, so you can use index cards for that, or you can cut out construction paper and make little squares. Okay, so those are the things. Make learning fun and easy to understand. Make it simple so that when you're teaching it, even a kindergartner can understand how to do it. And when you do the competitions, um, when you call people up for the competition, try to bring people that are kind of similar in their knowledge and their understanding of the subject matter go up against each other. So this way it's more of a challenge instead of having somebody who's like super fast and super strong against somebody who's a little bit slower. You want to match them up pretty well against each other so that it's a fair competition and it becomes fun. Also, when you are teaching, you want to make sure that you use all 5 senses as much as possible for each lesson. Okay? Because each child learns differently. Some children can learn really well by just listening to what you tell them. Some children can learn really well by looking to see what you're doing and remember it. Some children can just do hands on and learn how to do it by doing it themselves. Okay, so what I tell people is incorporate all of the 5 senses, and that way you don't have to take the time to figure out, well, how does this person learn? Because some people might learn using more than one way. So if you use all 5 senses, they're definitely going to learn it. Okay, so for hearing, you want to explain it verbally so that they can hear what you're saying. For seeing, you want to do a demonstration so that they can see how to do it. For touching, you want to give them an activity that they can do with their hands and so that they can do the activity themselves. And for tasting, for safety reasons, you want to use food items only. Okay, and just use those food items when you want to talk about taste. And then smell, you can use that. That's really good for science experiments. So if you're doing science with your children, using sense of smell is good also. Okay, so another thing that I would like to share with you is don't complicate the learning process. Okay, so a lot of times when they're teaching children about vowel sounds, they will tell them, and you open your mouth this way and you stick out your tongue this way, and then the kids are going, and they're trying to figure out how to use their mouth to make these sounds. So I just come up with different things to help them to remember the sounds, and if they get it close enough, then they're able to read the words. Okay. So for instance, long vowel sounds, they simply say the name of the letter. So for instance, a long A sound would be A. A long E sound would be E. The long I sound would be I, the long O sound would be O, and the long U sound would be U. Then for the short vowel sounds, I usually like to think of ways of getting them to remember it, because if you can say something that makes them laugh, or if you say something that they can relate to, they'll remember it better. Okay? So for instance, for the short A sound, okay, which is ah, I would say pretend like you have a bug on your arm and it's like ah, that's the short A sound. Ah. And then if they want to do a short E sound, I would say, well, how you doing today? Eh. Okay. So short E sound would be eh. Okay. And then they can use it that way. If you have better ones that you can use to get the sound closer, that's fine. These are just ways that I use that help the children pretty much. So for the short I sound, if you say, oh, how about putting a worm in your sandwich? Like, eh. That's the short I sound. Eh. Okay, and for if you're going to the dentist, and the dentist always tells you open wide and say ah, that's the short O sound. And for the U, if you give them a question like how much is 596 times 56, and they're like they don't know, and so they'll say okay, so that's the short U sound. So let me give you some examples of ways to remember the sounds. If you want to teach young children how to differentiate between the short vowel sound and the long vowel sound, you can use words like cap and put a final E on it. It becomes cape. Okay, so that's what you call the final E rule. If you have a word like cap and then you add an E to it, this E makes the first vowel long. So you had it without the E. Remember, the we said it's like ah, like a bug on you. So it's like cat. Okay. Then you add the E, and the A becomes long, so it just says its name, cape. Okay. So you can do words like cap becomes cape. Put like this so you can see it. Becomes cape. And say we have the word pet. Okay, so it would be a short E sound, which we said, pet. Okay, becomes Pete. Okay, so it's like pet. Now it's Pete. Okay, and then you have for the I. For the I, you would have kit, and then it becomes long. It becomes kite. Okay. Let's see, for the O, not becomes note. Okay, and then for you, we have cut becomes cute. So you can see they can hear the difference in the sounds. So we can show them the short vowel on this side and then the long vowel on that side. What you could do to make it more interesting for them is to give them index cards. And on one index card, you can put the word with the short vowel sound. And then on the other index card, you can just put an E. So when you hold up this card, you say, what is this word? And they're like, cap. And then you put the E on it. Now what does it become? Cape. And then that way they'll have fun reading it and getting through it. So that's one way to play the game. Okay? So let's see. If you're doing math with your child, look for the patterns. And once you explain to them what the patterns are, then it becomes fun for them because it's like, oh, I get to see the pattern, figure out what the pattern is. So for instance, if you are teaching them how to read very large numbers. Once they know how to read a three-digit number like 375, they can read any number in the whole wide world, no matter how big it is. All they need to know is what group it's in. So 375 will always be 375. But when you start adding a comma, and then you put numbers in front of the comma, okay, it's still going to be read as a three-digit number. You just need to know what the name of this comma is. Okay, so this group will be the thousand group. Okay, this is still going to be the ones, tens, hundreds column, just as this is ones, tens, and hundreds. All you have to do is say this three-digit number the same way you would say it when it's by itself, and then you would include thousand. Okay, so this number would be 385,375. Then you can add another comma, which they really like it when you start adding on. Okay, so this group, these are going to be the millions. Okay, so you have this three-digit number. You read it the same way if it's just by itself. 917 is going to always be the same way. All you have to know is what that group is going to be called. This is the 1 millions, the 10 millions, the 100 millions. It's still going to be read the same way, except you're going to say what the comma stands for. So it's 917,385,375. And then the children really get excited. They're like, give us more, give us more, give us more. So then you can add on, let's see. This one would be billion. I usually stop at billion, but you can keep going to trillion, quadrillion, whatever. You can keep going as long as you know what the commas stand for. Okay? And just tell them it's the same way. If this number was by itself, it would still be 825. Now you just say 825 billion, 917,385,375. So once they know that this is the ones, the tens, and the hundreds column, okay, it's going to still be the same here. This is going to be the 1,000s, the 10,000s, the 100,000s. Okay, and then same here, 1 millions, 10 millions, 100 millions, and so on. Okay, so make sure that they understand how to do this first, because once they have a good grasp of this, then they can read any number after that. Okay, so if you're teaching them the hundreds, tens, and ones columns, you might want to use money, or you can use groups of pencils to like put 10 pencils together to be the tens, or 100 pencils together to be the hundreds column, and then one pencil for the ones column. Or you can use other things like paper clips. So you can have something big like that to be the hundreds column, and then this size could be the tens column, and then this one would be the ones column. That way they can understand what these columns are about, and they can see it. Okay, so after you teach this to them, the ones, tens, and hundreds, then show them that they can read any number that you write. All they have to do is know the comma. Okay, now let's see, is there anything else? Okay, when you are teaching reading, okay, when you're teaching reading and students take standardized tests, they don't really know why the student doesn't get the answer right, so they just say that they did whatever they did for reading comprehension. But reading comprehension is comprehensive. So when you have reading comprehension, you're not just trying to see if the student understands the story, but you also are testing to see if they can recall facts from the story. And a lot of times when they're taking standardized tests, sometimes the stories are not that interesting. And so sometimes the students will tune out while they're reading it. And so they have to go back and forth to try to find the answers because the story wasn't that interesting to them. And so they didn't get the answers right because they didn't remember anything because they weren't really paying attention to what they were reading because it wasn't interesting to them. So okay, so what I suggest for that is when they are reading stories, have them imagine what they are reading in their heads. Let them see a picture. Let them describe the picture to themselves. So as they're reading the story, tell them to imagine what they're reading. And then if it has multiple paragraphs, just have them write a little note next to each paragraph as to what that paragraph was about. So if your student is able to read the whole paragraph or the whole story without any problems with sound, without any problems reading the words themselves, okay, and they understand what the words are, if they don't get the answers right, it's because they're not recalling the facts. If they do get the answers right, then that means they understood the story and they could go back and get the individual details. Okay? So, when they are reading the stories, have them imagine it in their head what's going on and write little notes little reminders, so that when it's time to answer the question, they can go back. There are also times when they're reading the stories and they're not pronouncing the words correctly, and so therefore they don't recognize the word, even though they would know that word if it was pronounced correctly. So you might want to help them with phonics. You have to listen to them when they're reading to you, and when they're reading to you, if they're having difficulty pronouncing words, then you want to work on some phonics, okay, to help them to be able to sound the words out better. Okay, so you can use what we just talked about with the final E rule. You can go, there are a whole bunch of different sites online and on YouTube that you can go to where they can give you some grammar lessons or give you some phonics lessons. So you're able to find all of that online, and that way you can come up with some examples to help them to learn how to break a word down, so it's easier for them to read it. Okay, so let's see. We have the phonics, we have the recall, and we have the comprehension. So you want to make sure that they have a, a greater vocabulary level as well. So each day you might want to give them a word that they can practice remembering what it means. And that will help them also with being able to read some of these stories that they give on the reading comprehension tests. Okay? So make sure that they form a picture in their minds, have them draw out the picture, and write little notes to help them to remember things. If they need help with phonics, find some phonics rules that you can get online, and that will help them. If it's a matter of the story is just not that interesting, okay, build up their interest in other subjects first by having them read stories that they enjoy. So, for instance, if they're into sports, if they're into ballet, they get stories that are at their reading level about those particular subjects. And then gradually you want to increase the difficulty of the books. So if they are a fifth grader and they're reading at a third grade level, you want to start them with a third grade level book about, let's say, baseball if they love sports. Have them read it at the third grade level, and as they're able to read that, because they're interested in the subject matter, they're going to read it well. Then, gradually, after they've read several books, you want to move them up to fourth grade level in the same topic or the same subject. And then, fifth grade books, once you see that they're able to handle that, then you want to start giving them subjects from that they're not that interested in, so that they can practice reading stories, imagining in their heads, and then writing little notes. Okay, so tell them to visualize what they are reading, and as they're doing that, it should become easier for them to answer the questions. Okay, I hope this has been helpful for you. Go ahead and have a blessed day, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy. Bye.